The suit has power. You have to learn how to control it. When you're small, you have superhuman strength. You're like a bullet.
You tried to hide your suit from me. Now, it's gonna blow up in your face.
Pick on someone your own size. There's no reason to be scared.
Oh, no, Daddy don't get scared.
Really?
How'd you do that, bro?
Look at your shoulder.
Marvel's Ant-Man.
Well, good morning. Good morning, Madison. Madison, can you hear me?
Good morning, Madison. Good morning, Harvest. I don't know where I'm at.
Good morning, Madison. We're trying our technology. I can hear you. We're trying our technology this morning.
Talking over there. I know she is. Good morning.
Oh. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? Can you hear me now, Michael Allen?
We can't hear her. You know what? We're trying.
Hang on one second. Did you hear that comment that he thought I couldn't hear? I can hear you. Can you hear me?
But we can't hear her. We're supposed to be talking. We tested this morning.
Oh, my goodness. Well, in about 1 second.
We'll figure it out here in just a second. If they can meet me over there, I'll do the intro over on this side. How's that?
Is he muted? Okay, I'm going to move on.
Yay!
Are you there? Can you hear me? Yay! Woo!
It's just a button.
Just so you know, I heard everything you said, that you knew I was talking, and those little comments that you were making. We are so glad you're with us at Crosswinds Church. Good morning, Madison. Good to see all of you this morning, and great to see everybody in Harvest. If you're our guest here this morning, we don't want to do a thing in the world to embarrass you, but we do want you to know that we treasure you being here. We're so glad that you've chosen to worship with us. All of you, as you came in, you were given an announcement sheet. It has your connection card. This is your communication card with us. Make sure you fill that out so you can drop that in the offering bucket at the end of our service. Now, we are super excited to try this. Michael's doing his Vanna White over there. I can see him. And this is something that we work on from time to time. And so if you have some feedback in what you experienced this morning, it would be great if you share that with us, because it's always our goal to serve you the best way that we know how. And certainly your input matters. And so if you have something to say, feel free to say that. But this morning, I'm kind of upset with myself because I didn't get any popcorn. And we've been doing the Summer Blockbusters series for 8 weeks, and I have yet to have some popcorn. So y'all don't eat it all, okay? I'm sure there's some on the floor. Yeah, there's probably some on the floor. There's some on the floor. It's all good. But we are in our final message of our Summer Blockbuster series. And in this series, what we try to do, we try to take a look at the summer's hottest movies. And in the movies, we try to find the spiritual theme for the movie. And as we do this, we hope that it's helping you as you go about your day-to-day life. We hope that it's showing you that, you know, Scripture tells us that we should have eyes to see and ears to hear. And so if we can have eyes to see and ears to hear in the world around us, then maybe we can really realize that God is at work in all kinds of ways and all kinds of places.
Now, the movie we're doing today is Ant-Man. Now, how many people have seen this movie so far? All right, we got a few little Marvel comics.
I'm the only one over here.
People. Yeah, Suzanne's the only one.
No, there's one, two.
We got two over there because, you know, they're going to make themselves known. Oh, I know. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But it's in a long line of Marvel superhero comic heroes, you know, like Captain America, you know, all these guys, you know, the Avengers. You nerds can name them off. What is it? Iron Man. Come on, yeah. You guys are totally outing yourself. You're such nerds. She's naming them all over here. Okay. Well, Ant-Man's great. And you know, his superhero is a superhero movie. So his superhero power is to make himself tiny. He can make himself small, but he carries the same mass and density as a full-grown man. So he's the perfect soldier. He can infiltrate anything, and he's still powerful, and he can wreck things around him and stuff like that. So he's just he's got a great superhero power. Now, the main character in this, if you look up on the screen, is Scott. Now, Scott is really not really a superhero. He's kind of a normal guy. In fact, he's a dad that's kind of struggling. He's supposed to be there for his daughter, and he's not really there for her. He's messed up a few times, so he's not really there for his kid. But his kid loves him, and his kid is Cassie. Now, Cassie's an amazing little girl, but she's one of these kids that's stuck in a step-parent with a step-parent, a mom, and a dad who's a little bit estranged. And so she's a little kid caught in that mix of emotions. She hero worships her dad, but then again, her mom and her stepdad aren't too hot on him, right? So a lot of us have been that kid caught in that thing, caught in that relationship. And then there's Dr. Cross, and every superhero movie needs its villain, right? And that's Dr. Cross. And Dr. Cross is a villain. And he is the protege of the next guy, which is Dr. Pym. And they have this weird kind of father-son relationship, even though they're not related. They're always like at each other. It's kind of a game of wills and pride with these two. And Dr. Pym is the creator of the Ant-Man suit. And he thinks Dr. Cross is wacko, so he's not going to let him have the suit because he thinks he'll sell it to the military. So Dr. Cross is always trying to invent his own so that he can have that power there and sell it. And then the last person, Hope. Hope is great, but Hope is Dr. Pym's estranged daughter, but she works for Dr. Cross. So there's all these weird kind of family dynamics that play in here. And it's a lot of movies. This movie's got a lot of family dynamics in it, so you just got to watch it for that. But what's really cool about this, and we recommend this movie for anybody. If you want to take your little kids to it, it's got like one cuss word in it, and it's probably one you've already said in front of them. So you're good. And it's really a very clean movie. No sex, nothing like that. No, I mean, it's really a good movie if you want to take your kids to a superhero movie. This is the one you'd want to take them to. And it's humorous, and it's it's all kinds of cool. But the best thing about this, what I like, is that the superhero is just a normal guy. He's just a normal, everyday guy. It's the suit that gives him power in this, and that's just amazing.
Look what I got.
Oh, no. She's got popcorn. Score.
Taking care of me. Now, believe it or not, this is a superhero movie, and the theme that we were able to pull out of it is parenting. Wow, out of a superhero movie, you got to be kidding me. Because sure, these superheroes, they want to save the world, but they want to save their daughters. They want to save their family, and they go after them for that in this. And it's, just really, really interesting of how they want to do this. They want to save the world, and yet they want to save their children. And parenting, if we're honest, parenting, is that not the toughest job in the world? Raise your hand if you're a parent. Yeah, if you're a parent, is it a tough job? It doesn't come with a job description, right? Now, some people, if we were to talk about parenting and you're in a church service, some people would be like, well, I don't have kids, so I don't have to pay attention today. Yes, you do, because we all know kids, right? We all know kids, and there are kids all around us that need saving. There are kids need to know that they have value and that they matter in this world. And not only that, many of us have nieces, we have nephews, we have children who have children, all these things, friends that have kids, ways that we can help them if we understand some things about parenting. Now, research tells us that the number one influence in a child's life is their parent. Whew, that feels kind of heavy, doesn't it? When you're a parent, there are a lot of expectations on you. We place so many expectations. We even play the parent comparison game. Or, wow, they're a better parent than we are. We do that. There's a lot of obligations when you're a parent, things that we have to do. We don't really have a whole lot of choice in that. And then, can we just talk just for a minute about the responsibility? Is it a big responsibility to be a parent? Sometimes it's overwhelming. Now, this morning on your connection card, we have a couple next steps for you that you can mark. And as we're going through this, we want you to think, because we always want you to engage with what God is saying to you in the moment. And one of them says, when it comes to my parenting, if you're a parent, one thing I need to change is. Maybe you'll hear something this morning and go, yeah, I might need to work on that a little bit. Or then another one is if you don't have a child, one thing I can do to influence a child in my life is, maybe there's something that you can do to make a difference in the life of a child. But all this responsibility and all this worry, it's so heavy, it's so tiring, it's very, very hard in our lives. And as we go through it, we can be a little bit overwhelmed. And I don't know about you, because I'm a parent and I've raised a child, and one of the things I was always worried I was going to mess up. Anybody else ever worry about, you're messing this? I used to always tell Savannah, I'm going to give you great stories for your shrink one day, right? All these things, because because we're work in progress. Do kids come with a manual? No. Do they come with an instruction guide? If they did, I think we'd actually read it, unlike the VCR one, right? I don't know about you, but I would pull that instruction. And parenting is a lot of on-the-job training, isn't it? Just a whole lot. And so we make a lot of mistakes and we do all this. And in the movie, there's Dr. Cross, who's the evil one, and then there's Dr. Pym, who kind of created this thing. And they have this weird father-son relationship. And Dr. Pym suddenly starts wanting to be around Dr. Cross. And Dr. Cross asks him this. He says, "Why'd you pick me?" Dr. Pym says, "Well, I saw myself in you." He says, "Why'd you push me away?" And Dr. Pym said, "I saw too much of myself." Ooh, when we think about parenting, isn't that our battle? I mean, isn't that our nightmare a little bit? Because we want to put the good in our kids, right? We all have some good. We want to put the good in. The challenge is to leave the bad out, isn't it? And that's the challenge that we face. And so being a parent in the world we live in, particularly in the modern world in which we live, it is a pressure cooker. We feel a whole lot of pressure. But this morning, what we want you to remember is this. Small things make a big difference when it comes to parenting.
Now, even the youth that are in both of these campuses right now, you guys can use this stuff. You use this in your relationship with your parents, too. It's not just a one-sided thing. You guys need to get a better understanding of what your parents go through anyway. So it's great that you understand all these things. Now, when we're talking about this and we talk about parenting, there are some very specific verses in the Bible that we can kind of pull up. And in fact, the Apostle Paul, when he talks about parenting, he kind of goes through like family roles, right? Now, Paul was a guy who didn't used to like Christians, and then he found Christ, and he started following Christ, and he started teaching people to follow Christ. And so he had a lot of wisdom about how a family could operate when that family was a Christian family. And so he'd like to share that in a letter to a church in Colossae. It's called Colossians. It's in your New Testament. He lists out all these little roles that parents and like a father could do this, and a mom could do this, and kids do this, and he even adds servants into the family unit. So if you're a servant or you were a slave, if you were a Christian, you were supposed to act a certain way in the family unit. And so he has all these specific instructions, but before he gets to the specifics of how to be, he has very general instructions. And this is where the youth and the kids can kind of play in too. These things apply to you as much as it applies to your parents. So, but we're really going to focus in on the parenting today. And listen to what Paul said. These are his general instructions for Christian households right here. Listen to this. He says, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, as Christ followers, clothe yourselves with compassion and kindness and humility and gentleness and patience." He's saying, put it on. Put these things on like a suit. Kind of like the Ant-Man. He'd put on the suit and he'd become very small and very powerful. And what Paul's saying is that if you could just do these small things, if you could clothe yourself with these small things, you could become powerful. And so when it comes to parenting, it's really small things make a big difference.
First thing Paul tells us to put on is compassion. And if we're going to put compassion on, we have to think about, how can we be more compassionate towards our kids on a day in and day out basis? In the movie, there's this quote, and it says, you get a second chance. Take a real close look at it. What he's talking about parenting here. You're going to get a second chance. Take a real close look at it. And a lot of times we don't realize that when we're parenting, we're getting a second chance. Because I don't know about you, but when we parent, isn't that when we really, really begin to grow up? You do a lot of growth. We grow up a whole lot. And we also get to grow up with them. And we need to have compassion on our kids, and we also need to have compassion on ourselves as well. Because growing up is hard. Can I get an amen on that? Growing up is hard. It's just hard to grow up. Think about all the times, all the hurts and the bumps and the bruises you have. Think about all the times you were let down. Y'all know that feeling when they're going to announce the team and they post it on the gym wall? Y'all know what I'm talking about? And you have to go and look and you check and darn it, your name's not on there or your number or whatever, and you think there must be an error, and so you keep looking and you keep checking it again, right? That's what we do. There's a lot of letdowns. Ooh, and what about all the times when we're left out? Oh, do you remember when you hear about that time when everybody went out to have fun and you find out you weren't invited? Oh, that hurts. Don't you remember those? And then just the heartache. Think about your first, that first little boyfriend or that first little girlfriend that you had, and then, they don't like you anymore, and you think your life, and, sometimes with our kids, we kind of demean that, but it's just as real to them as it is to us, so it's hard to grow up. And so as parents, we've got to play a little trick on ourselves. We've got to kind of try and transport ourselves back. Do you remember what it's like to be 6? You remember what it's like to be 13? Remember what it's like to be 15? A lot of times we forget and we don't even make an effort to understand them right where they are. But the trick is to transport ourselves back. And this compassion thing is such a huge thing with our kids. Because if our kids are raised in a home where there's no compassion, we will raise defeated kids. We will raise kids who feel small. We don't want to make our kids feel small. And if there's no compassion in everything, there's such high standards, no one can ever catch a break, there's no compassion, so much we can make our children harsh to where not only do they feel small, they make others around them feel small. You've been around adults like this before, people who do that. If you think about Jesus, really the author of compassion, wasn't he? Over and over again in Scripture, we hear that when Jesus saw people, he saw somebody struggling. You know the verb that's used a lot? Jesus was moved with compassion. I mean, he was moved. He was moved where he was going to be compassionate toward that. And that's the kind of relationship we want to have our kids. We want to move our kids toward compassion. We need a world. Look at the world around us. Read the news. Read the comments on AL.com, right? We need to raise kids who have compassion, who have the capacity for empathy. Compassion is such a small thing that makes such a big difference.
And it, not only compassion, but also kindness. This is the thing that Paul lifts up as a small thing that makes a big difference. In the movie, there's this quote. It says, everyone deserves a shot at redemption. And you might think, well, what has redemption got to do with kindness? And really, when you think about it, when you're a kid, you're going to make mistakes. That's growing up, 101. You make mistakes, you learn from it, and you go on. And, it's real hard to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and try again if you're in an unkind environment. If you're in an environment full of kindness, you create a redemptive environment with kindness. And there's a lot of ways to do this, and probably the best thing you can possibly do is learn your child's love language. You guys know about love languages? Time, talk, there's acts of service, there's gifts, there's one more and I'm missing it in here, but there's all these things that you can do. The love languages, I know, touch, that's it. Yeah, you're right. Time, talk, touch, acts of service. So if you learn what your kids, the language that your kids' heart speaks, and you do those little acts of kindness for them in those things, it means a world of difference for them. So when they make mistakes, they just know that they're not going to be treated harshly. They're not, because it's a kind environment. It's a redemptive environment. And we need to learn this. And there's all kinds of little things you can do. You can spend time with you can take your kids out on daddy-daughter date or a son-mom date. Just spend a day with one kid. You can do things like that. You could show up. Heck, 90% of parenting is just show up. Just show up. You know what an act of kindness it is just to show up, especially when you don't want to be there. Show up. Show up. When you got a million things going on, show up. It makes a world of, because it screams at your kid that you love them, that they're cared for, that there's somebody there to help them through life. All these little acts of kindness. You know what Suzanne used to do for Savannah all the time? Still does it for her. She's in her mid-20s, still does it for you. You're a grown woman. She'll write you little notes. Sneak them in things, like sneak them in your lunchbox or your bag or something like that. Just cute little notes. She does it for me too. And I get them, I go, aw. But it just screams out, I care for you. And she does these little kindnesses for things. And it's just little tiny things like that. And the thing is, your kids are watching. It's not just for your kids. That's where it starts. But are you a kind person at all times? Or do you show little kindnesses to people that need them? One of the things that kind of hit us that Savannah was watching and paying attention, there was a time when she was a little bit younger working at a restaurant, and she was a wait. She had made all her tips, and I think my mic just went out. Still going?
Keep going.
All right. Well, I think they can hear me. And she was working as a waitress in this restaurant, and she heard another waitress who's a single mom just didn't have enough money to make the rent. And so Savannah gave all her tips for the night, her and I think she talked some other waitresses into it, giving all their tips of the night to this one girl. And it's just like this, she didn't need the money, she was fine, we took care of her. But it was just a little tiny act of kindness like this. Creates such a redemptive environment for people that they know they can dust themselves off and make it next time. Because they got people that care. It's these little things that make a big difference in people's lives.
Paul goes on and he tells us that we should put on humility. We have a lot of things that we have to put on, but all of these add up to make a big difference. And so Paul talks to us about this concept of humility. And I think sometimes that we forget that how we parent, that we're leaving a legacy. You know, we can leave a legacy. Maybe not all of us had the best parents in the world, but we get to get that second chance that I was talking about, and we leave a legacy. Because one day, your kids will parent someone else. And they'll be your grandkids, and you want them to be well-behaved, right? Right. Yeah. And so this humility concept is, and there's one principle I believe in parenting that's hard for us as parents. I know it was hard for me as a parent and continues to be hard for me as a parent. And it's the simple practice of being willing to apologize. A lot of times we think as grown-ups that, you know, they're kids and they can just deal with us. And we don't realize that when we mess up, we need to apologize. I can remember one time when Savannah was younger, I just kind of did one of those things where mom goes off. Any of you moms ever go off? Yeah, y'all know what I mean. You know, mom kind of goes off and everything, and boy, God got all over me. God's like, you need to go apologize. And I'm like going, no, I don't, God. No, and God's like, you need to go apologize. You need to go apologize. And I really didn't want to, but I did it because God wasn't going to let me rest till I did it. But you know, if we're willing to apologize, it changes a lot of things. As adults and kids are watching us, if we act like we have it all together all the time, that's really not helpful. Because in this world, none of us have it together. None of us all the time. None of us have it together. We have got to be vulnerable in front of our kids. We need to admit our weaknesses. We need to tell them sometimes that our feelings got hurt. We need to tell them about a wound that we have. We need to even be willing to tell them a little bit about our past at an age-appropriate level, right? We need to be willing to do that because you know what? If we hide, guess what? They'll hide. You hide from them, they're going to hide from you. And we don't want that. We don't want to raise kids who appear one way in front of us and are hypocrites on the other side. In the movie, it says, you know, we're all doing this for reasons much bigger than ourselves. And aren't we? I mean, we're parenting for reasons much bigger than ourselves. And so we don't want to do that with kids. We want to be real in front of our kids. And God would want us to, you know, we get to show how a relationship with God works out. And one of the 101s for our relationship with God is that we have to admit before God when we were weak. We have to admit before God when we stumble. We have to admit before God when we make a mistake. And how wonderful if we could do that in front of our kids, admit that. How wonderful if we could ask for forgiveness. Wouldn't we be modeling just the foundation of what it means to follow Jesus Christ if we could do that in the lives of our children? See, humility, it's a small thing. It makes a big difference.
And in addition to that, there's gentleness. Now, I know this kind of sounds a little bit like kindness, but there's a slight difference, and I want you to see it. And it really applies to parents in a certain way. You know, there's a time in your kid's life when you just talk to them so nice all the time, and they're so wonderful, and they look up at you and they hero worship you, right? You remember when your kids hero worshiped you? Remember that time when they did? And you just yearn for that someday because something shifts along the way. Something shifts along the way, and I think it's they learn the human language. They learn English, and they start talking back to you, and they start arguing with you. And, you know, really, they're just growing up. They're learning to be critical. They're learning to think. They're learning to argue their way through things. They're learning to be independent, but we don't take it that way, right? All of a sudden, this little kid that used to hero worship me thinks I'm the devil, right? And they're talking back all the time, and so we bark back at them, and, you know, we forget we're supposed to be the adult sometimes, right? We're supposed to be the adult in this. And sometimes we're just mad and we just go at them. And, you know, in the movie, the mom of Cassie looks at Scott and she said this to him. And I thought this was very touching. She says, become the person she thinks you are. She hero worships you. Be that person. Be that person. You know, become that. And when it comes to gentleness, we need to do this. We need to talk to him like we used to talk to him. Very calm, very gentle, very soothing. And we don't. We bark at our kids. You know, Suzanne said this once. She said, you know, if we talked to our coworkers and our friends like we talk to our kids sometimes, we would be friendless and jobless, right? Have you ever just stopped for a second after you've had an argument with your kid, just said something to your kid and replay it in your head like you're saying it to your boss? Would you talk to anybody else like that? I mean, serious. Have you guys had that happen to you? Your parents just say something harsh. It's like, wow, dude, where'd that come from, you know? And we as parents need to play that back in our head and say, how did that come across? Because we don't mean it, and sometimes we just load all this stuff with our frustrations. So we really, really need some skills when it comes to being gentle with our kids. I mean, the first thing we need to do as parents is we need to quit listing things. You know what it is? Like when your parents are mad at you, so they pull up the entire list of everything you ever did wrong, all your offenses against humanity and nature, right? Do you remember what that's like? Do you know what that's like to have that whole list read to you all the time? Do you know at some point you just shut off, right? You quit listening, right? Go, okay, yeah, I did that, and I did that, and it makes you feel about that big. And you just we need to quit listening. When you're mad at your kid about something, it's okay to be angry about a subject. Focus on the subject. They quit listening after a while anyway. Focus on the thing you need to talk about, and talk about it. Don't be mean about it, just talk about it. Explain how you feel about it. Don't feel it at them. Suzanne read this one thing once that said that for every critical word you give your child, it takes about 30 positive affirmations to undo the weight of that on a kid. And so she looked at me one time when I was mad at Savannah, and she goes, you get one critical comment a day, you better make it count. You know what? Make it a good one, right? Make it a good one. If you're gonna critique her, you get one a day. You better make it good, and then you better make up for it by being nice to her. And so they need that in their psyche to kind of get along and not be beat down all the time. And so we need to keep the main thing, and we need to only offer like one critique a day. And really, sometimes parents, you just need to take a breath. You need to close your mouth, run off, put yourself in parent timeout, put yourself in a corner like a little kid, and face the wall until you can get out of your chest and up back into your head. Okay? Because when you start feeling harsh attitude, and your kids know every button you got, and they'll push it, and you're just like raging on the inside, take a break. Breathe. Walk away. Go become the adult again, and then come back and talk to them. This is a spiritual thing for Christians too. Something you can start doing right now outside of your home with this is you can quit becoming the major critic of the entire world in front of everybody. It's okay to have opinions about how things are and how the world's running and all that stuff. I can't tell you how many kids, because Suzanne and I love youth, and we'll hang out with youth a lot because we both used to be youth pastors. But sometimes kids 12, 13 will be talking about the world, helping them think about it in Christian terms and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, it'll be some people group or something that we're not supposed to like. And, they'll just rah, 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 start ripping on this person or people that think a certain way. And we're just like, dude, you're 12 years old. Where did you get that sound bite from? And we know exactly, parents, where they got it from, right? They got it from us. Because we rip on the world in front of them. And the Apostle Paul, same one that wrote this, he said, whatever's true, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable, think on those things. In other words, we're here as Christians to build the world up, not tear it down. And we do that in front of our kids, and we feed them all these sound bites instead of teaching them to approach the world with gentleness and thoughtfulness. And especially with our words. Because when it comes to gentleness, it's the little things that make a big difference.
Now, the last thing Paul tells us to put on is this concept of patience. Boy, that's the toughest, isn't it? Oh, it is tough. Because parenting, let's be real, we're in it for the long haul, aren't we? It's drawn out for 18 long years. And just so you know, those of you that are hoping for 18, just so you know, it ain't over at 18. It keeps going. It's the gift that keeps on giving, parenthood, right? On and on and on it goes. And we make so many sacrifices for our kids, don't we? Sometimes we give up our own desires, our own wants, our own dreams, our own plans, and we do that. But I'll tell you one thing. We parent at our worst when it's all about us. When it's all about us, that's when we become the worst parent possible. And so patience is so important. In the film, one of the characters says, it's not about saving our world, it's about saving theirs. When you're a parent, it's about saving their world. But these kids, if we're honest, they drive us crazy. Sometimes they drive us nuts. And sometimes we really do just want to scream, Calgon, take me away and never let me come back, right? I mean, sometimes I know parents who want to pack a knapsack and hit the road, right? That happens. That's part of being a parent. And then God, because the only one who could do this is God, he gives us this amazing reminder. So you have this kid, and all day long they've been on your nerves. They've been running around, tearing the house up, on your nerves, kicking the dog, toys everywhere, haven't eaten anything, been crying because this hurts, that hurts, hitting their brother or sister, driving you nuts, and finally they collapse in this little ball on the couch. And you look down. You look down at them after thanking God Almighty for putting them to sleep and Benadryl. But you look down at them, and your heart shifts. You're struck with the wonder and the potential and the beauty that that child has right before you. You know, when I think about that, when you look at a sleeping child, it kind of changes everything. It puts everything back in perspective for us. I sometimes wonder if that's why God created sleep. And then I wonder, when we go to sleep, does God look down on us like that? I think sometimes as parents, we forget that kids, their first exposure to God isn't necessarily the God in heaven, it's the God they see in us. And so that causes us to have to ask ourselves some tough questions. The God that kids see in us, do they see an angry God? Do they see a critical God? An impatient, a frustrated God? Or do they see a God who looks at the world with awe and sees the beauty and the potential and the wonder? Because patience is a little thing that makes a big difference.
Now, Paul doesn't leave it there because, you know, like every superhero outfit has to have like its utility belt, right? Well, not everyone, but some of the best ones. Got his little utility belt, the thing that kind of holds the outfit together, and that's where Paul goes with it. He talks a little bit about something else, and then he ends with this thought. He said this. He says, over all these virtues, all these good little things that you can do that make a big difference, put on love. It binds them all together in perfect unity. Put on love. You know, it's great to want your kid to be awesome. It's great to want your kid to succeed, to do amazing things with their life. It's great to have high expectations for your children. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't have the love to propel that forward, you don't have anything. They're going to be doing it for all the wrong reasons. The love's not going to drive them. It's not going to pull them into the future. It's, you know, you got to have that base of love. That's all your power that drives everything. It binds all those things together. You can teach them to be moral. You can teach them to work hard. You can teach them to do all these things. But if their motivation isn't love, you know, in the movie Ant-Man, Scott, he's at a moment where he's just about to give up. Even though he knows he's got a daughter that's dependent on him, even though he knows that there's the world that needs his powers, even though that he's about to give up and he's about to quit, and he starts to think about the love he has for his daughter and the love his daughter has for them. And that love pulls him back into the fight. And I think we need to do that. We need to allow our love to pull us back into the fight as parents. We need it to pull. As kids, we need our love to put that love that they have for us to pull us back into that relationship with our parents. Let that love drive you. Let that thing, you know, and the thing is, they've got to hear one thing loud and clear from us. And this is something Suzanne, I've heard her say it 100 times if I heard her say it once, is Savannah. She says, you know what? I might get mad at you. I might be upset. I might be disappointed with you. But there's one thing you got to know, and you got to get this clear. You can never do anything that will cause me to stop loving you. And she said it over and over. Do you remember her saying that to you? You can never do anything that will cause me to stop loving you. And if anything your kids need to hear, they need to hear that. They need to hear that your love is unconditional. You might be mad, you might be upset, you might be disappointed, but they got to know that that love doesn't go away because of those things. Because it's through your love, the parents' love, that they figure out how God, their heavenly parent, loves them. And they need to see that God that might be upset, he might be angry, he might be disappointed, but he didn't stop loving you. He's never stopped loving you. There's nothing you can do, God says, to make me stop loving you. You have no idea how high, how wide, how deep that love goes. And that's the message. If we know anything, parents, it's this small idea that you can never make me stop loving you. It's that small thing that made such a huge, huge difference in the life of a child.
You know, as parents, we have the opportunity to be a hero in the life of our kids. And we might not be a superhero, but we can certainly be a hero. We have a whole lot more power than we think we do. In fact, in the film, it says this. It says, the suit has power. You have to learn to control it. And we have a whole lot of power. We don't get to put on a parent suit and have it all figured out. But God, because he loves us so much, he's told us all these little ways, all the small things we can do that can make a big difference. When it comes to our kids, we can have more compassion. When it comes to our kids, we can be a little kinder. When it comes to our kids, we can model humility. When it comes to our kids, we can come into their lives and we can have gentleness, and we can have the ever elusive and the hardest to struggle with. We can have patience in the life of our kids. You know, when Savannah was little, like little kids do crazy things. And one time we were in our kitchen, and I was really excited because I'd finally, was young, and I finally had the money to get a real wood table instead of a card table. I'm super excited. Y'all remember those days back in the day? And I'm so excited, and I have this nice little oak, little round table. And I go out in the other part of the house, and I walk back in the house, and she's sitting at the table, and she has a red Sharpie. And she's writing her name on the table. And I looked at her, and I went from calm mom to crazy mom in a nanosecond. I said, "What are you doing writing on the table?" She looked up at me and she said, "I don't want you to forget me." Now, either she's a master manipulator, or that is the best statement I've ever heard from a child. Because you know what it did? It caused a shift in my thinking. And it caused me to think about how we respond to our kids. Our kids deserve us to respond the way God would have us respond to them. Our kids deserve the same response we want God to have when we mess up as God's children. Our kids deserve that same response. We never need to forget about our kids. We never need to forget that we are the number one influence in their life. Never forget that you can be the parent they believe you can be. You can be the parent God wants you to be. And always remember, it's the small things that make a big difference. Amen.
Amen.
We come to our tithes and offerings. At Crosswinds, our tithes and offerings are for people. Well, look who's up there. Look who's up there. Yay. We'll get to that in a second. We come to our tithes and offerings. At Crosswind, our tithes and offerings are for people who consider Crosswind their church home. If you're our guest here this morning, please don't feel obligated to give to God's mission that we perform. This service is our gift to you. I want to call your attention to the back of your connection card. I hope you filled that out by now. Remember, you have a couple next steps on there. When it comes to parenting, one thing I need to change. You will fill that out. Michael and I promise to pull those when the connection card analysis comes into us. We will sit and pray for you and pray for your family, whatever that thing is that you need to change.